Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 4 of this special slash new slash remodeled match Showmatch between kauP and Szalami. We are jumping into a map that used to be an Age of Empires 4 map. It's still an Age of Empires 4 map made by the devs, but completely redesigned. Welcome to the brand new and rejuvenated King of the Hill. This map, we have seen it in many tournaments. It had consistency issues with woodline spawns, it had consistency issues with game balance, but now this map is completely new, and the overall concept of this map completely changed. If you look at how the map looks like now, as we have kauP spawning on the left side playing in blue French, and on the right side is going to be Chinese for Szalami in red. So instead of having separate wood lines, now you have basically one chunk of wood on the outside. This makes this map much more vulnerable, much more defendable. So, King of the Hill basically used to be a map that was very open on the outside, very raidable for cavalry, good for aggressive play. This map is completely different because now you see the cliffs will allow you to wall off very, very easily. So, they took King of the Hill and turned it into a much slower pace, much more defensive focused map, I would say. Now, is this a bad thing or a good thing? I don't know, but one thing I have to praise with this map is that this is a random map generation, as you see here, and it's really consistent from what I've seen so far. The gold mine spawns seem fair, the hill spawns seem fair, the hunts, look at that! Almost perfectly distributed relic locations. 2 in the middle, 3 on the south, perfectly distributed. If every single map in Age of Empires 4 was this balanced when it spawns, we would be very, very happy. This being said, we have French versus Chinese here, and you sort of see that old line versus new line thing coming out here, because the old line on this map is of course French. But I feel like for this map, as I said, the entire concept of the map changed. It used to be an open map, something that's suitable for stuff like Mongols or French, but now this is a lot more defendable. Of course, you only have one sacred site. So the moment you wall yourself up and turtle inside your base, you will surrender that central sacred site to the opponent. So I'm curious to see how this will go, but do let me know in the comments how do you feel about this map, because I'm really curious at your opinions. Do you think this is a good change towards King of the Hill, or is it something that you would probably like to see reverted? Personally, I think the most important thing right now is that while they changed the concept of the map, it became a lot more consistent. Wheelbarrow is in right now for kauP in the meantime. So the map is now a lot more consistent. And honestly, I don't necessarily mind the style change either, because if someone wants to play open maps, they would just play Arabia, they would just play Lipany, High View, and whatnot. So this became much more of a closed map style, something like Altai, something like Hillandale. And in fact, this actually became one of the most closed and slower paced maps, I would say, of all. In many ways, it reminds me a tiny bit to Arena, because you can wall yourself off very easily, and then you will just fight for the middle in the end. Barrican of the Sun coming in for Szalami on the right side. He's going to protect his lumberjacks out there. It's a little surprising that he didn't start chopping over here. Now, if you plan to wall yourself off, the best place to chop is always in the corner, because that's where you have most of the trees close to your lumber camp. It's a small thing, but it could be a factor. kauP is now coming in with the School of Cavalry, as now we're looking at a completely different Chinese that's being utilized as well, because Chinese is one of those civilizations that suffered from, or not necessarily suffered from, but just was exposed to quite a lot of changes in the new patch. The first thing that you will notice is that the entire dynasty system was shuffled around. So basically, the requirements of a lot of things were moved one dynasty earlier. So instead of Song dynasty to make the villages, now you can make them in the Tang dynasty, which is the starting one. Instead of who thought it's a good idea to put a Chinese sign on the UI? May I ask that? I mean, sure thing, it looks nice, aesthetics-wise, but holy potatoes, this is going to be very uninformative for the players that are playing. I hope that the players see the text instead of the sign, because I'm not gonna lie, if I was playing this game and I was seeing this and I was like, what kind of dynasty I'm in even? Anyways, as you see, now the villages are available in Tang Dynasty. Jugenu, still a Song Dynasty, and the villager boost is also Song Dynasty, as we do have a bit of a scuffle around with those scouts trying to harass the lumberjacks. Szalami is coming in aggressive. Players just don't want to let me explain the new dynasty system, so we'll have to take a look at this fight. Looks like the scout will go down here from kauP, but he's going to trade it off to the scout of Szalami. But hold on, looks like Szalami isn't going to get that kill, and he's going to lose the second scout. Oh, disaster comes in here. Disaster. kauP trapped that scout in there, he fought it, and Szalami believed that he's just going to trade scouts evenly to the opponent, but that wasn't the case. He lost the first scout, and then the second scout runs into the town center fire, loses both. So now, as you see, the bonuses remain the same, Ming, Yuan, and Song. But the buildings were shifted forward. So now the granary is a Song Dynasty building, which means that your farming eco is going to be a juggernaut in Song. Because getting to Yuan Dynasty was quite expensive, so getting granaries wasn't really a thing for a long time for the Chinese players. Now with the granaries, their food eco is an absolute madness. And pagodas were shifted to Yuan Dynasty. So those are the major changes when it comes to the dynasty system. There were some balance changes with the buildings as well, so the granary isn't providing as much boost as it used to, stuff like that to balance things out with this, but that's the main conceptual change with the dynasty system of the Chinese that's coming into AoE 4. The other thing to note is that the officer is now taking a lot more time to train, and it's also costing gold. So Imperial officers are even more important than they used to be, and even more expensive, and that's part of the reason why Szalami is not using a single officer right now. In fact, if you remember the Chinese build orders before the patch, or well, it's technically still before the patch because this is just a test branch of the new patch, but in the older version of the game that we are still using on the live branch right now, Chinese just go for the mill, supervise it, that's how they make their food eco work. But that's no longer the case over here because the officers became a lot more difficult to access in Dark Age. Knights are now coming in here for kauP, and it looks like Szalami wasn't expecting Knights to come in because he seems to be a little surprised about this aggression on the way towards him. Town Center was placed close to the hunt and the stone mines over here, and he's going to try to get that wall up potentially and get the Town Center up, but this is going to be difficult. I was a little puzzled why he didn't start walling at all, and now he's getting punished by just 2 knights over here. Imperial Academy coming in right now, so Song Dynasty is on the way. Chinese villagers still build fast, so you could start building this up, and I love this move. He has 1 villager building it and 9 garrisoned. And by having 9 garrisoned, the firepower he has is enough to kill the knights, but he's also not going to stop building the town center entirely, because of course, that way his opponent would take it down. Tower is not being built over here. Once again, you have to keep 1 villager constantly on that position to build it, because otherwise you will lose your foundation. Your opponent is doing a ton of damage on it. Looks like now kauP is realizing that he won't be able to take that down. Tower is now around, and with that, kaup's forces are getting pushed back. Town center will go up here for Szalami. Behind this one, you do have the hunting out for kauP. He could technically go for the boars even, because his opponent isn't contesting map control at all. And looking at kauP, he wants to go to a fast castle. He's got a blacksmith, he's got 2 knights out, but as you see, his resources are enough for castle age. He's likely going up with the guild hall, if I had to predict, and indeed the guild hall is now coming in for him. And I wonder if he will actually start mining stone. Speaking of stone, yeah, there is a little stone to work with, way less stone there used to be. If you compare this map to what it was like before, previously had a ton of stone in the middle as well, which basically meant that players were spamming castle after castle. kauP is dropping a tower in the middle, so he will start securing that central area, and he will start thinking about capturing that sacred site. Now in terms of stone, you do have 1 deposit in the middle, that's a large deposit. You have 1 stone in here, and kauP should have a second small stone somewhere as well, which I cannot find. Oh yeah, there it is. And then Szalami stones are both in this lower area. That's slightly better for Szalami, but not a big deal, really. Bulls are now coming up for Szalami. It's 35 villagers for kauP right now. Szalami is sitting at 33. Of course, Song Dynasty 2 town centers will allow him to catch up. You can also practice your Chinese with all these markings at the bottom left. Here comes the first officer. By now, the amount of tax accumulated with those buildings is quite considerable, so you can start picking those up straight away. Tower in the middle, coming up for kauP. And with that, he's also starting to mine stone. He wants to secure that foothold. And with that, if he's able to drop a castle there, it's gonna be difficult for the Chinese to take it down. It's all about that with the French. That's how it used to be built, and this is the same build order or same idea that kauP is utilizing to win this game. He wants to get a foothold in the middle, capture the sacred site, drop a castle, and then just force the opponent to be the attacker. He hasn't really walled himself up back at home, which is a little risky, because if Szalami shows up with a bunch of lancers or even horsemen, he could lose villagers on this hunt, and he could lose villagers on this hunt as well. Looks like a defensive tower is up for Szalami. He just wants to see what's around. He wants to see if there are any enemies closing in, and so far, his opponent kauP isn't really going for that much aggression. Balls are now coming up for kauP. Really minimal aggression from both of these players. The French player could have been a little more aggressive with his knights. Chinese player now supervising that mill, so now you're seeing that officer being utilized. There is just one officer right now for Szalami as he's grabbing wheelbarrow. And if you look at his resources though, those are looking pretty healthy. His opponent just reached Castle Age, and he's going to reach Castle Age as well, but he's now ahead by 8 villagers. So that 2,000er play from the Song Dynasty is paying off quite fast. More knights in queue for kauP. He's also grabbing the Spring Golden placements on that tower, but the most important thing is going to be his stone count. Because with that stone count, he could drop a castle. In fact, his first castle should even be over here, because this will be overlooking this valley, and then he can build a second castle behind in case he loses control over this area. He's capping the Sacred Site right now, so Sacred Site countdown will begin at 11:11, I believe. Yeah, it's around 11:11, so that's the time that the countdown starts, which means that Szalami has until 21:11 to decap the Sacred Site. For now, he doesn't seem to be very stressed, and I understand it. 10 minutes is a long time, so he needs to make sure that he's assembling a big push. Could be Palace Guards and Nest of Bees, but given the fact that his opponent is heavy on the Knight department, we might just see Spearmen popped out here for Szalami. So far, no signs of army production for him. He's just focusing on his eco, whereas back on the top of the hill for kauP, he's dropping the first castle. Now, this game definitely became way more passive than I initially anticipated, but in some cases on King of the Hill, depending on the players, they just generally play very passive. That's applicable for the old generation as well, which was a lot more open. So I think that would have been an option for the players to be a little more aggressive here, because neither of them were really walling. It seemed like they just knew that the opponent could wall, and that's why they did not invest into any aggression. They just said, okay, if I get any army close to his base, he will just wall, and I will just bump into walls here. kauP still mining stone, though. He's gonna have a second castle up soon. I wonder what Szalami is up to. Szalami's base is being watched by the opponent, as you see here, so right now, kauP is fully aware that there is an archer range coming in. I wonder... maybe Jugenu? Would be an interesting idea here. It would be a very interesting idea. Or crossbows against the knights, that's the alternative. Crossbows would make a lot more sense, okay? It's gotta be crossbows. For a brief moment, I thought he wants to just go for, like, full Jugenu, which would have been weird against knights. This being said, of course, the crossbows will need some sort of support against mangonels. That could be springolds, that could be cavalry that can snipe mangonels. For now, the Sacred Site in the middle was under the control of kauP, and he's dropping production buildings right next to that castle, which means that Szalami right now is on a timer. Relics are also being brought back by kauP, and having the relics here on the battlefield will also help him potentially get a Volo out in case he needs it. So if there's a big battle coming up, he feels like he can't really win that, he can try to get a Volo in to buy himself some time, push the enemies back for a brief moment. Looks like it's good old-fashioned Palace Guard crossbowman combo. Now we're up to 3 officers for Szalami, and he's dropping a granary. Now that's where it's getting interesting. So this building used to be a Yuan Dynasty building, and this basically is going to increase your farm gather rate by 10% nearby. But there is one extra thing. The buff that this building provides stacks, which means that 3 of these will buff you to 30% gather rate. And you can also supervise this. So the granaries will make the Chinese food eco substantially better than what it used to be. Now, Szalami does have his own castle available as well, as you see, 900 stone in the bank, and Chinese castles are very powerful because their hand cannon emplacements will be much more devastating against enemy rams, in general enemy units. First, mangonel out now for kauP. kauP has enough stone for almost 2 castles at this pace, and he's ready to fortify the middle. Still 7 minutes to go for Szalami to decap that Sacred Site in the middle. Now grabbing some more clock tower springolds, some lancers are coming in. The production buildings are being supervised except for the stable. So you have the barracks being supervised, the archer range, no stable supervision just yet. And that's going to be a second granary. So you will see these food villagers suddenly skyrocketing in the eco of Szalami. I'm curious at that food eco. And this could be a concern for kauP. Because kauP is depleting those food sources, the berries, the hunts right now. And his opponent is switching into an absolute juggernaut food eco with the farming. So Szalami could have a great food eco. And if he's able to assemble and maintain that, he's going to have enough resources to steamroll this one rather easily, to be honest. Now, he's still going to have to find an answer to those multiple keeps in the middle. As it looks like... Was it a wolf? I think it was a wolf that the castle was shooting upon. There is 4 relics, by the way, in for kauP. Currently at 86 villagers is Szalami. kauP is sitting at 58. And this was so far, by far, the most passive game out there. First castle now coming in here for Szalami. That's going to be a staging ground for this assault. His stone count is increasing quite rapidly, so he was thinking about the second castle. His army is a mix of everything, palace guards, crossbowmen, springles. The numbers are not so impressive though. kauP is at 22 army, his opponent's at 26 though, so theoretically speaking, the army numbers are favoring our red player. Here comes the first clock tower, trebuchet for Szalami. He's setting up that food eco with the granaries, and I'm really curious at that. Like, these villagers are on steroids when it comes to gathering food. And having some more granaries nearby will just buff it up even more. So, this is no joke. Any villager that's at the intersection of those two circles gets 20% getter boost. And that is comparable to the English farming eco, especially if you get a third one. So, in many ways, the Chinese will be able to get a farming eco that's comparable to the English, if not better. Now, of course, this was a possibility for them before the changes, but Yuan Dynasty was rather expensive mid-game, so players didn't really go for that. But now that the granaries were moved to Song Dynasty, they're much more accessible. Yuan Dynasty is still expensive, but you don't need Yuan Dynasty anymore for the granaries, and that's going to boost your food eco quite substantially. Trebuchet is now setting up here for Szalami. He's shelling the gate in the middle. The gate is definitely the weakest part of this wall, and that actually is historically accurate. The gate is usually the weakest part of all walls. So that's the target for Szalami right now. He's trying to bash his way through. New layers of stone walls being added by kauP. 6 minutes have passed from the Sacred Site countdown, so only 4 remain here for Szalami. And it's getting concerning because he's nowhere close to starting to contest that middle area. He was fully aware that this was gonna happen. He knew very well that if he was up and plays 2 town centers Song Dynasty boom, then his opponent will capture the Sacred Site and he will be the attacker. So Szalami expected this. The question is, does he have enough time to push this? He's going to have time for one big push, that's clear. The question is, can he capitalize on that Song Dynasty eco? 102 villagers versus 63. That's so many villagers that he can sacrifice a couple trying to make a castle in the middle, and I think that's going to be the plan. Foothold being established here by Szalami. That's going to deny some of those stone walls. The mangonel fire, however, wiping out most of those villagers' HP. And the next volley could wipe out so many villagers. The villagers of Szalami are pretty much dead here. And he could lose dozens of villagers here to the next volley. Next volley is coming out. Palace guards will absorb most of that. But the castle goes up. Nest of bees also coming in. And that is able to arc over walls. And look at the amount of villagers. Textos save lives, ladies and gentlemen. Most of those villas are at like 3 HP or so. Free. All of them. Textos basically saved them, because if they didn't have that extra 25 HP, they would be dead by now. The castle is shooting back at those mangonels. One mangonel gets taken down, but only 3 minutes remain. kauP still has the middle, and he's got quite a lot of towers in here. He's going to get some emplacements on them. And kauP is in Imperial. That's the bigger thing. I didn't even notice that kauP was going into Imp. He probably withdrew the resources from the guild hall, and he just used that to go into Imperial, and the Red Palace is out there. It's very bad now for Szalami, because the Red Palace is insanely difficult to destroy. And of course, there are a couple of towers, couple of castles as well over here. I don't think that Szalami can do this in 2 minutes. And the problem is that you can't even go for a landmark snipe in the opponent's base, because you will still need to destroy the Red Palace. I think Szalami waited a little too long. He wanted to play this a passive game, because he knew very well that he can defend his eco, but that's the trade-off that you're taking. You wait too long, and you will just be sort of logged out from the middle, and despite the fact that Szalami has a juggernaut economy, we're talking about 120 plus villagers probably. Actually, it's 99 because he probably lost quite a few here in the middle area. But still, 100 villagers for him. He had a great eco, but he isn't able to push the middle. Only 1.5 minutes remain. The trebuchets are still setting up, shelling the Red Palace. No wood out there for kauP though. kauP has many villagers in the middle, and you see he just had to buy a ton of wood to repair that Red Palace. About a minute left to go for Szalami. Does he have enough juice here? I don't think so. Red Palace is gone. It's being repaired right now by kauP. So the next target is going to be that castle. Red Palace once again under fire. Only a minute left to go. 2 Nest of Bees opening up against those mangonels. Crossbows crawling closer. There is still a layer of stone wall to get through. Bunch of cavalry out here. 1 castle is getting taken down. The Red Palace still being shelled. kauP, his resources are still looking pretty decent. He's at 200 wood right now. Other side, when we look at the resource bank, Szalami has a ton of resources. If he's able to neutralize that sacred site, he could still have a chance. But how is he going to neutralize that sacred site? We only have 30 seconds left to go. Only 30 seconds left, and kauP still has a layer of stone wall over here. Szalami is blasting through that one as we speak. He's trying to go for the gate. Nest of Bees setting up behind to try and kill the villagers sent to repair. kauP 10 seconds away, and Szalami just taps out of this one. He waited a little too long, and well, bit of an anticlimactic game over here with Szalami just waiting a little too long. That's the trade-off that you're taking on this map, and this is one of the reasons why I don't necessarily mind the map being made a little more defensive. Because ultimately, you go too greedy on the eco, and you will not have the chance to contest the middle, and that's exactly what we saw. kauP didn't go very greedy, he had the map control, and ultimately, kauP just secured the middle, and it was very difficult for a player that gave up on map control entirely to push that. So this is the new and remodeled King of the Hill. I'm fairly certain that there will be some people that won't be very happy about this map and the redesign. I think it's a good change, but I also think that this map is not going to be played that frequently in tournaments anymore, because I think this is not going to be a great tournament map anymore. It's a change that makes the map a lot more consistent. It's a change that actually makes the game, or makes the map different from what it was. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think camping within your own base is not going to be a strategy that works out. Because otherwise, as you see, the opponent just gets the middle, fortifies it, and you have no shot. With that, kauP takes game number 4 here, and we're going into game number 5, which is once again going to be on a custom map.